Hey, there we go. All right.
Hey,
So
that's what I wanted to hear. All right.
yeah, so just a little fill in because we're gonna start this one a little weird, but yeah, we were talking for a good hour, and
Yeah, about
then
that.
I realized that it wasn't recording. Um, we
That's
thought
how
that,
professional we are.
yeah, we thought that the computer was mad at us for making fun of it, saying now recording last week, and you guys couldn't hear it, so we just sounded like idiots, and then we were giggling at the end too because we heard it again, and but you guys didn't hear it. So
No,
in any
but
event,
we are the noise brigade,
yeah,
and
we are the noise brigade, and
the uh, one of the funny things about this episode was, what if we actually recorded the first one?
hey, that's it. We're done. What if we recorded the first one? Well, we didn't.
No,
So
so we're gonna have to do it again. So take two.
yeah,
But um, our topic on this one was something that we had talked about multiple times through different scenarios. And one of my favorite comics growing up was the What If series. And there may be something coming out on Disney Plus involving What If.
this is true. There is that nice Marvel series that's going to be coming out. It's going to be animated, delving into a bunch of different what ifs in the Marvel universe. And so, what better way to kick it off than paying homage to Disney Plus and Disney and their Marvel What If series? What if WWE had gotten purchased? Or what if
Yes.
they do get purchased? And Tom, who was number one on your list?
Well, funny enough, Disney could possibly be the number one purchaser, if you will, of the WWE. And I only say that because that obviously makes the most sense in the fact that it was, for one, rumored last year, and they actually, and we'll get into this a little bit more, almost bought a half stake in ECW, supposedly, or allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So yeah, we'll get into some ideas here about who would buy the WWE, what would happen next, who would be in control, what would some of the past or legacy content look like, and maybe have a little bit of fun with, what if it was a Disney or whoever, what would some of the things look like, or maybe some of the gimmicks, what would change. We can have some fun with that. So, but the first thing that really, to kind of preface all of this, that you and I had been talking about through text message, whatever, was the transition of the WWE network to Peacock. That was interesting. What did you think about that when that was first announced and when that happened?
It just struck me as odd because they had the perfect streaming platform for their product. They had hyped it up. You remember the T-shirts, the flag out in front of Titan Towers or whatever their complex is called up in Stanford, with the 9.99, and they made
Right.
a big deal out of it. They had commercials with fans chanting it. They had T-shirts, um, but it was very interesting and on multiple fronts because you figure now you're moving your content, mixing it in with other content, um, and you're going to, obviously they have different standards. The general public has different standards than your average WWE viewer. So there's going to be some stuff that's going to possibly have to change in making that transition.
Right. Exactly. And that kind of, brings the reason kind of why, we thought maybe Disney would be, or at least I did, initially, why they might be the primary purchaser. And, the other thing too, we discussed some of these spring cleaning firings that happened at this time of year. WWE is notorious for this. I don't know how many spring seasons have gone by, and we get these, like, handful of talent, mostly in ring. But this is a little different, right?
Yeah, there was the initial bloodletting in April, which typically happens right after WrestleMania, which is, the quote unquote Super Bowl for WWE. It's where everything kind of resets and set up what you're going to be doing for the next year. Um, Last year, obviously it was Black Wednesday, and it was a bad year for it. This year, it happened again, but it's kind of bled out through the month up to even today. We're getting word that there's been massive layoffs, but not talent wise. It's been at the corporate level.
which is interesting. And that happens before. You know, it's not like it's anything new. It's odd that it coincides, this transition to Peacock, a lot of these other talent, you know, and you know, whatever we can talk about, maybe pandemic related, whatever. But one of the things you and I kind of discussed, you know, off air, if you will, was, you know, maybe this is kind of a cleanup, you know, for a sale. You know, let's, you know, I'm not talking about the necessarily the people or the talent, the administration, whoever is being, you know, fired, released, any of that, and you know, not their personalities, but they're just trying to, you know, maybe clean up the company to, you know, prep it for a sale, because, you know, maybe this is time to strike while the iron's hot, you know.
Right. And
Okay.
the one thing I did read was that they're kind of reorganizing and kind of restructuring some things in some departments that maybe were close to doing the same thing, and they're reducing redundancy. They're really trimming fat is what it seems like, which
Yeah.
all plays into that. It's all stuff you would do prior to a sale to get things in order so that everything is orderly, and the potential buyer can see what is going on.
Right. Exactly. No. And so you and I both know this, and I think it's not a grand mystery. You know, the top of the ladder right now, and you know, not 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 all of the decision making, but when it comes to making the final decisions right now, it goes to Vince McMahon. He's not going to live forever,
Right.
and it would make sense if he wants to kind of go out, you know, on top to quote unquote retire, to sell it. But Disney, we've mentioned, that was rumored last year. Uh, you had mentioned to me about, you know, Disney has some streaming and possibly contract things already with the WWE, which would make even more sense, right?
Right. So they, excuse me, they were Disney bought Fox. Disney has Hulu, which already airs some WWE content. Disney has Disney Plus, obviously. And I don't know how the contracts work. I don't know how they get paid for, or how WWE gets paid by Disney slash Fox for airing SmackDown. But it would make sense since they're already doing the SmackDown contracts. And I know it's some multi-billion dollar contract. Would it make more sense if they could save money by buying the product that they're putting on their channels?
I mean, I really think it's a great thought, you know, and that's the thing. And really, the only, you know, caveat I would think to all this is the network shift to Peacock. That's the only thing that I find a little odd, about, you know, maybe Disney coming into play. They still to me make the most sense, because it's only like, you know, these big companies. Um, I just don't know, because what NBC Universal is, what, Comcast.
Yes. Yeah.
That's all there. I just don't see them going all in on the WWE. Although with already doing the Peacock thing, that could be another interesting player in all this.
Right.
We
And
also, you and I kind of talked about Amazon maybe even being another, you know, rumored, because that was rumored last year that they
right.
may have it, because they have their own streaming space.
And honestly, I didn't even think about it until you just mentioned that. I was trying to place who Peacock was owned by, and it's NBC Universal, who is a subsidiary of Comcast, or vice versa. It would make a lot of sense for them to buy WWE.
It's, you know, it's one of these things where you have these very few large entities, Disney, NBC Universal, Comcast, whatever that is. I'm not really entirely sure myself. But or Amazon even.
Right.
I don't think you have many other big players. And you and I are thinking about this from like the business side of it. It's we have to air this show. They're getting rid of these people to clean this up, and it's this, that, and everything. Let's talk wrestling. What if, just like Vince McMahon showed up on Nitro, Tony Khan shows up on Raw?
I would have to change my pants. Honestly, I think that would be one of the coolest things ever. Like we discussed in the episode that shall never be heard, because some idiot forgot to hit record. It was me. Anyway, so I just can't see Vince. There's two things that I can't see Vince doing. Number one, I can't see Vince taking orders from anybody. Number two, I can't see Vince letting anyone else get over on him. And I feel like if Tony Khan were to somehow figure out a way to buy WWE, Vince, one of the deals, one of the like agreements for it would be that Tony Khan could not show up until Vince was well out of the building. And there would be no crossover. There would be none of that. So unfortunately, as much as I would love to see that happen, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, it was a pipe dream. It's an interesting thought. No, I completely agree. And if this does, like, we don't know if this is going to happen. We're just playing what if here. If it does, to me, it comes down to a business deal. It's going to be a big company. It's going to be a Disney. It's going to be a Comcast. It's going to be an Amazon. As much as like you, I'd love to kind of see that the wrestling, go hand in hand with, and oh yeah, let's have Vince eat his hat just because he made WCW do that. That's not going to happen.
Right.
I just I don't know. I'm a never say never person, but yeah, Vince, wrestling business, Vince would never let that happen. You're exactly right.
Honestly, I think what the most likely, if it doesn't sell within the next year, what I would say is probably going to happen. Vince sells after WrestleMania 40, has a grand farewell at WrestleMania 40, and then rides off into the sunset.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair guess.
Even if he doesn't sell, I think one way or the other, by WrestleMania 40, Vince is done with the company.
Yeah. I can't really see him hanging too much longer. I think the on-screen absence. I know he does show up from time to time, but his whatever he does on the show is nowhere near. Obviously, he's not going to wrestle these days, but he still, is not going to cut the promos and the things that he used to. And granted, he's been doing that for what? He started commentating and doing in-ring work, microphone stuff. 50 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, so it's time. But all right, to that point though, talking about Vince, is one of the questions we wanted to pose here. Who would be in control of this? And we're going to take him out of the equation because let's say they are bought. Let's say Disney buys them. We're going to assume here that Vince would no longer be at the helm. What do you say? Who's in control here?
So, I mean, the obvious answers are Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, and then as like a two, they would be 1A and 1B, and then 2 would be Shane. But I just came up with a good one. So, if Disney buys them, Kevin Feige.
Oh yeah.
Completely joking, but am I though? Because look what he did with the Marvel universe.
Yeah, it's
transition that to the WWE universe. Yeah, see what I did there?
It's not a bad person actually, because again, we don't not necessarily keeping this just to, people in the wrestling business. But that's the thing, though. I think one of the things that history has taught us that outsiders either brought in or that are just happen to be there. Whenever Ted Turner's organization owned WCW, and prior to Eric Bischoff running, the greatest run WCW had, the company was basically run for the most part by non-wrestling folk. And, early 90s WCW, I'm talking 90, 91, 92. And I'm not saying there's not good stuff there. And there were some great wrestlers around, obviously, with, Hollywood Blondes, and Foley is there. And you got some great talent. I'm not saying that. But you also have some just really just unwatchable things. You mentioned this, yeah, RoboCop. It's not good, and I'm not saying that, now, what Backlash had zombies,
right?
Yeah, crossover, whatever, but you get a lot more of that kind of stuff with non-wrestling people,
right?
And that's, I don't know, maybe that'll be the ultimate goal for, an entertainment company is to go that route. But at the heart of it, you still have a lot of history, a true wrestling company somewhere in the middle there. So to me, you keep with, you mentioned Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, Shane up top there. Another thought I had, and this delves off some recent comments from Jim Ross. And again, I'm thinking more of creative, more of a head booker, but Randy Orton. And I say that, maybe not now, 2, 3, 5 years down the road. I think, he generational talent. His dad was in the business. He's been around. He knows the company. He knows how everything works. He knows, he just gets it. I don't know how he would really be behind the scenes in an upper tier role that way, but knowing how he is on screen and just all that experience, I could see him being an option. Who else do you have?
There's been a couple that have popped up in my mind that we didn't discuss on the episode that never happened. But I'm thinking here, and I'm thinking Matt Hardy.
Ooh.
And I'm thinking Christopher Daniels.
I like that. That'd be interesting.
Because, Matt Hardy, obviously, he's having a little run where he's more like in a mentor role right now in AEW. And you've got Christopher Daniels, who pretty much just hung him up after his match with him and Frankie Kazarian versus the Young Bucks. I don't know if you saw the pictures of him after that match, but dude,
not good. Not good.
So it seems, and I know that he and Frankie Kazarian aren't going to team anymore. They've already made that known. And it's not out of a lack of want to, but Christopher Daniels realizes, hey man, I can't do this forever, and he's starting to transition more into a backstage role. And I realize he does that for AEW now, but with a sale of almost said WCW, with the sale of WWE, maybe whoever comes in could sway somebody like him or Matt Hardy once his contract's up, or even a Chris Jericho.
Right, and I think, in the other episode that was blank, you mentioned Jericho, and that I didn't even think about him, and I guess because of such strong ties to AEW right now, but he would be perfect, absolutely perfect, and a head, lead creative. But Jericho even has that kind of beyond just the creative, and I'm not necessarily saying that he would be top flight business, on the business side of it, but he's also an acclaimed musician. So I mean, he has his hands in different things, so he would be one. You had also mentioned Edge. I actually thought was interesting.
Yeah, Edge apparently has been doing some booking work behind the scenes, and he's been really good. Oh, you know what? Which leads me into the next one, Daniel Bryan.
Ooh, yeah. It's funny. It's funny whenever you take the business out of this and you look at just people that could possibly, either run creative or be at top of it. Your mind really starts working because then you get back into the wrestling part of it. He'd be perfect.
Right.
He'd be perfect.
There's just so many people that we've watched over the years. The shame of it is that Dusty never got a chance to be a head booker. I think that
for like the big
right, because obviously he booked some in WCW.
Yeah, WCW. Yeah, he was pretty much as top of the food chain as you could get there. But yeah, in the world now, in like a WWE, no, I agree 100%. Like, where I would love to see him now in a company that big,
right?
Lead that. It's exactly 100% agree.
Yeah, I mean, and you had mentioned on the episode that never was that if we, as much as we would like to see somebody like Paul Heyman do it, obviously that's not going to happen. JR is not going to happen.
No.
And we had brought up the whole Lana, Bobby Lashley, and Rusev angle, and my whole opinion was if that's the kind of stuff that Paul's going to bring to the table, which who knows if that was his idea, the writer's idea, whatever, but he was in charge of Raw at that point. But if that's the kind of stuff that Paul's bringing to the table, then we're probably better off without it at this point.
Yeah, and truth be told, he's not going to be given any kind of control over any business.
No,
I mean, he had proof positive with what happened at ECW there, and again, I'm not knocking it. Just it is what it is.
Right.
Creatively, the man's a genius.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
For most things. But then you don't strike gold every time. That's it. The thing with him is that, like you just said, some of those storylines that take precedent, you have to cut your losses. And I don't see him as being that kind of person. And that's when you end up with, like you said, a Lana storyline, all that garbage. It doesn't need to be there.
The Liv Morgan that went nowhere.
Yeah, just doesn't need to be there.
Right.
Okay. So we've kind of thrown some ideas around about, who would buy it, who would be in control. When we talked about it the first time, I kind of thought ultimately it's not going to be just one person, not that it is now in the WWE, but Vince still kind of signs everything off, if you will, that it would more be by committee. And again, it could be a combination of those folks or whoever, I don't know. But all the legacy content, all the past content, what does that look like moving forward?
Honestly, it scares me to a degree. When it was on WWE Network, it had a place of reverence. It was in a place where everybody that was going to that spot was going there to watch wrestling, and the people who were curating it cared about wrestling, and everything about it was wrestling centric. Now it's on a variety streaming service where people who aren't into wrestling maybe are going to come across it, and they might put something on and then they see something they don't like and then it causes an issue. We talked about on the episode that never happened, some of the censorship that's going or that went on with the WWE network itself, necessary censorship. There wasn't a whole lot, but there were certain things that needed to be trimmed down. And then we go to now on Peacock, it's being curated again, and they're going through and they're taking things out, and which leads us to the debate of how much is too much to remove, and how much could just be handled with a similar disclaimer before the episodes, like I discussed with the Muppets, where the Muppets on Disney Plus, the '70s series, there was a lot of problematic stuff. They put a little disclaimer up saying it was wrong then, it was wrong now. We left it in to keep the artistic integrity or whatever their reasoning is. But they put a little warning on there like, hey, there might be some stuff in here that could upset some people. We recognize it. It was wrong. It's in there. Skip it if you want.
Right.
And some of the stuff with the WWE and ECW and WCW stuff, maybe better left on the cutting room floor. But should that be up to the network, or should that be up to the viewer?
Exactly. And that's one of those things that, I noticed very early on, because being, we've talked about this in another episode, and, being an ECW fan and actually having gone to the shows and watching ECW, when we lived in South Jersey, when it was running their hardcore TV on channel 48 at 10 o'clock at night, and playing the actual real music. And when that actually hit, and I say real music, the theme songs that were, not written by ECW, Enter Sandman and Natural Born Killers and all these songs, but
Man in the Box.
Yeah, exactly. And once it hits the WWE network, that stuff's all cut out. Okay. So you lose some of it. Watching Sandman's entrance with Enter Sandman, awesome. Watching Sandman's entrance without that song is not quite as impactful.
Right. Well, let me tell you how pissed off I was when I bought the original One Night Stand and I thought, oh, it's WWE. They're going to get the rights. And then watched the DVD, and it's the dubbed over crappy generic butt rock.
Right. Yeah, so it's not good. And that's the thing. So you have filter number one. And I'm not saying that, oh yeah, they're because of music rights. No, I'm not getting into that. But filter one, you lose music. Filter number two, Peacock Network, or Peacock streaming service, whatever you call it, you start losing certain segments. Okay, filter three, exactly. What comes next? What else are you going to lose?
Right.
At some point, you're going to come across, and I'm going to sound silly for saying this, but you're going to come across somebody that looks and says they're watching a Hulk Hogan match from the 1980s, and they look at the ring and they're like, you know what? I don't like the match because the ring posts are blue.
Right.
And they're going to be offended by it, and they're going to be mad. Seriously, it's going to happen. Someone out there is going to be, and whatever, that's the right, that's the right to be upset about that. But that's when you throw the disclaimer out there. Be like, look, this is what this is, blah, 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 whatever. But I am in 100% agreement that, yeah, there's stuff that was wrong when it aired the first time. It's wrong now, and it's going to be wrong 20 years from now. So it shouldn't be there. But there are certain things that, yeah, they might be a little edgy, but they're not really wrong. They might kind of upset, certain, people or whatever for what it is. Maybe it's too gory or whatever it is. But that's why you don't watch the rated R movie. If that's not your thing, don't watch it.
It's like when I went to see Deadpool when it was in theaters, and within like the first 10 minutes, somebody got up, started walking out of the theater, and yelled, "Y'all need Jesus." What did you think you were coming to see?
Exactly.
But dude, listen, I'm going to say this, and this is the hill I'm willing to die on. They need to leave the scene with Kai and Tai and Val Venus alone.
Oh, yes.
Choppy your PP is not on that episode of Raw. I'm gonna lose it.
Yeah.
Because I need that. I need that. I need to know that exists, where I can watch it, not just on YouTube. I want to hear Kai and Tai say choppy you PP.
You just want, you need to revisit it.
Yeah, it's just something every year. Watch Val Venus get his rhymes with Venus chopped.
But that's the one thing, so it does get sold, which, I certainly see within the next 3 to 5 years. Disney, Amazon, Comcast, whoever. that's one of those things to look out for, is that there is going to be content. There's content that was already trimmed with Peacock. Of course, there's going to be content that's trimmed from whoever else. Even if it is Comcast, it's still on their own entity. That's yeah, they have that now. They're going to keep looking at that stuff, and maybe they're just like, you know what, ECW has no place here,
Right.
And they own it, and they have every right in the world to say, you know what, all right, that's it. We're just getting rid of it. They don't need to be on here. It's
And
one of
that's
those
what worries
things.
me. One of the reasons that I would like Tony Khan to buy WWE is because he has a genuine love for the business. And I feel like it would help prevent some, more of that kind of stuff happening. You can look at the Flyers, for instance. When Ed Snyder died, Ed Snyder was their owner. He loved the Flyers. He loved hockey. He bled orange and black, which, come to think of it, may be why he died. No, that's sorry, that was wrong. But Ed Snyder was passionate about the product, and it showed. They might not have always performed well on the ice. I mean, hell, they haven't won a Stanley Cup in over 40 years, but they always made moves that signified that they were trying, and that they were doing what was best for the fans, and they were always in pursuit. Even if what they were doing didn't pan out, they were always acting in pursuit of the cup.
Right.
And ever since he passed and Comcast took full ownership of the team, it hasn't been the same. And I'm worried that the heart and soul of WWE and of that content is going to be stripped away with an owner that's a corporation or that doesn't have their heart in it.
Right. And it's funny. It's funny to say that, because you kind of almost view the WWE that way now. It's just a corporation, and there's a lot of it. Unfortunately, is very bland, unwatchable. But there's a reason why that is. They have to cater to certain audiences. I'm gonna get into that. But to then go on and be bought by a bigger fish, if you will, and then to have that extra layer of filtering to really tone it down. I think you saw that with Turner Networks and their executives in WCW, and then you end up with like just garbage, basically.
Right.
Hopefully that isn't the legacy here, but it's happened before. So I could certainly, kind of see that happening again. But who knows? Maybe AEW ends up being that much of a major player, and we can maybe reignite some kind of war here. And so maybe that's the swan song. Let's have a war until we're sold.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? If it makes the wrestling business better, I'm all for it.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, and I think you'll agree, all we really want, doesn't matter what name it's under, we just want good wrestling. We want entertaining wrestling. As long as professional wrestling continues and it's a good product, and it's you can tell that it's not just bland corporate garbage, I'm gonna show up to watch it.
Right. And I'll kid. I it's funny. I didn't watch Backlash, obviously, with our podcast episode. Still haven't watched it, and I probably won't. But I watched WrestleMania both nights, and yeah, not all of it was great. But you and I, talked about it here, this podcast. There was enough there that was like, wow, this is still really good.
Right. I mean, and that's the thing too. Like, don't take this as me. Oh, WWE is great. I love it. No, man. I honestly, I kind of hate the company a little bit. I wasn't a fan of the cuts last year during the pandemic, especially when they're raking in record amounts of money when you're firing people during a pandemic. That's kind of a BS move. And there's been things that I've been angry about. I've been angry about how they've used wrestlers, how they haven't used wrestlers, how they've let talent go to waste. and things that they've done that I just feel have been in poor taste as far as how they've treated their talent and their, and their employees. But at the end of the day, I still like the WWE and I don't want them to go away.
Right.
It's kind of
Eh,
like, you know, like the Eagles. I'll get pissed at the Eagles, but I still love them.
right. Yeah, it's funny. It's there's few things that are existent from your childhood that way, television wise. It's like, hey, that was there when I was a kid, and the WWE is still there. Yeah, it's a different name, whatever. Different people out there. Certainly, products a bit different now than it was then. But I think the whole point is as long as it doesn't have to be violent, it doesn't have to be brutal, as long as it's entertaining,
Right.
so. But I think that wraps up. So what if the WWE was sold? Would it be a big company? We talked about who would be in control, and we talked about what would happen to some of the content. Is there anything else to kind of wrap this up with?
No, I think our next, or at least maybe not our next what if, but we're going to do this kind of as a series, spread out here and there. But I think one of the ones we'll have to get into is what if WCW would have won the Monday Night Wars, what that landscape looked like.
Yes, and I love that. I threw that out there in our notes. What if WCW would have won that, and what if Eric Bischoff's Fusion Media Venture group there would have actually been able to come through with that purchase, or something to that effect. I think we could have some fun with that.
Yeah. And just to give you a little tease, some of the other ones we were looking at are, what if one of the major sports leagues in America, so the MLB, NHL, NFL, or NBA, would have done a fantasy draft. And also one of the other ones we were looking at is what if Nintendo doesn't ditch Sony and they make the PlayStation together? And on that same vein, what if Sega doesn't panic release the Saturn? How does the console war shake out? So,
yeah, there's some really cool ideas there, and I think we'll have some fun with this one leading up to the premiere of What If on Disney Plus. There.
yeah. So,
all right. Well,
I think that's a solid 2 episodes that we recorded as one episode.
Yeah.
And I actually did hit record this time. I can see the little blinky light. So we're good. We got this one in the can. And I think we should quit while we're ahead.
Sounds good, man.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. We will be back next week. And until then, be good, be safe. Can't be good, can't be safe. Name it after us.
Later on.